Welcome to Hockey Night in New York, where Islanders hockey always reigns supreme. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, Hockey Night in New York is your home for all things Isles. Now, let's drop the puck and get this party started.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Hockey Night in New York. Welcome to the program, everyone. It is Sunday, December 11, 2022. Coming at you live from Florida Media in Rockville Center. Another wonderful show coming up for you tonight. Eric Fichaud, former Islander and current of TVA Sports, will be joining us tonight to talk about the Isles, to talk about the return of the fish. My name is Sean Cuthbert. With me as always, or usually, is Mr. Chris Botta. Chris, how you doing?
How you doing, Sean? Hey, Islanders country. Nice to see everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot for joining us, folks. So, before we get into it, I want to remind you all that we are proud to be presented by Blue Line Deli and Bagels, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington, 217 Carlton Avenue in East Islip, and of course, UBS Arena at Belmont. Also, a big thanks to Lost Farmer Brewing Company, located at 63A 2nd Street in Mineola. And want to tell you guys, we got a big viewing party coming up on Thursday, December 22nd from Lost Farmer Brewery. Isles vs. Rangers. We're going to do a live pregame show at 6 p.m. Leads you right up until puck drop at 7. It's going to be a great time. There's going to be raffles, 50-50, prizes, giveaways, lots of fun, drink specials, food specials. Going to be fantastic stuff there. We'll have some details coming out on social media, so definitely check us out for that. And, of course, a big thanks to our brand-new sponsor, Main Street Board Game Cafe in Huntington Village on Long Island's North Shore. Games for sale and for open play, food and drink, beer and wine, fun and friends. Bring the magic of phones down, eyes up, tabletop board games to your family. Our staff will help you find the right game for you, from old favorites to the hottest new release. We have everything from strategic to easy party games. Get off your screens and unplug your game for a night your family will remember. Looking for meetups to join? Our Magic the Gathering, Dungeons & Dragons, or Game Night Live communities are welcoming for all. We also do parties and corporate events. We're located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village, and you can go to mainstboardgamecafe.com for more information. Main Street Board Game Cafe. Find your crowd. Unplug your game. So, with the pleasantries out of the way, Christopher Botta, only 2 games since our last show, since we had that funky Wednesday night show with Stefan. So a little Metro home and home of sorts, back-to-back at least. Friday, you have the road game in New Jersey. Then they come home to play Carolina. Friday obviously goes very well against the Devils. Saturday, not so well against the Canes. What do you say?
Friday was just fantastic, wasn't
Yes.
it? I mean, it was a great game. You knew Jersey was going to make a run at the end. Kind of felt like an NBA game a little bit. But, full credit to the Islanders for being ready for that game against some odds, I would say, because Jersey has been rolling so many teams. A little bit of revenge for when the Islanders got rolled themselves at UBS to the New Jersey Devils. So that was just a fantastic Friday.
Yeah, no question about it. And I don't think a lot of Islander fans really chalked that one up for a win heading into it. Like, okay, maybe we drop this one to the Devils because they're so hot, and hopefully we come back at home and, take one in front of the fisherman crowd on Saturday night against the Canes, and it went the opposite way. And what an effort. And just what was so impressive to me was how, and you actually noted this game earlier in the season when we were talking about, how they got things started, and the Devils just ran the table against them in that game. 4-1 win, and it just looked like they outclassed the Islanders. They couldn't keep up, the youth, the speed, and good on the Islanders, good on Lane Lambert and his staff to adjust and really come out of the gate firing against this team. And the fact that they were able to put up 6 goals and do it early and then kind of play a more defensive style, and one of the wackiest things you'll see in NHL hockey, the fact that the Devils pulled the goalie so damn early, around 7 minutes to go. You have a record-breaking shift from Hughes, 6 minutes and 2 seconds, I think it was. So entertaining, but also I'm sure nerve-inducing for Islander fans, especially since they were slowly chipping away at that lead that they had. And who knew that a 2-goal lead so late would feel so unsafe? But the Devils were really taking it to them, and the Islanders did a good job to clamp it down.
And also, Jersey got the first goal, so you're kind of thinking, uh-oh, here we go.
Right.
And, just again, all around, really, really impressive. I think that's a game that meant a lot to that team. Yes, it took a lot out of them holding on to the end, but they really earned the 2 points.
They did. And there was obviously a little controversy between the Isles and Devils, or at least Isles and Devils fans, funny enough, with the big Romanov hit on Wood. What was your take on that?
The whining is just, well, all you need to know is that on Sunday, Miles Wood came out and said, had my head down. By the way, his dad, Randy, who I love, who was on the Islanders when I worked there, Randy, who was a 40-point season player around there, was a good second, third line player, very intelligent player. Also was known for having his head down. If there was anything that wasn't great about Randy's game, if Randy hears this, hopefully he backs me up or isn't,
I'm sure he's tuning live
isn't upset. But he was known for having his head down when he skated. So Miles just came out and completely absolved the player, and you never see that. So all credit in the world to Miles Wood.
Yes.
Tired of the whining. Every time somebody gets hit with a big hit, and then everybody has their different take on it, and the home team announcers for both teams have their home team take on it too.
Right.
Just take the hit, get up. Miles did. And he said the right things today. So clean hit, inarguable.
Yeah, I love that he said it was a clean hit himself.
Yeah,
for sure.
Really good.
But let's dive a little deeper into that, because an interesting point that's come up, and Romanov mentioned this himself. This is something new, I would say, over the last, 5 to 10 years, whatever you want to call it. But, back in the day, if somebody leveled a guy with a clean hit, you move on. You take your lumps, maybe you get back up, you shake yourself off, you go to the bench, whatever it is, but there's usually no big hubbub about it afterwards. But now, even if a guy gets laid out on a clean hit, nothing dirty, nothing headhunting, no elbows, nothing, you're getting jumped.
And you know where I think it is? One of my theories is that everybody in this day and age, and I also believe this is somewhat of a social media thing, including the players, I think the players are confused. I think the coaches should maybe provide some direction about this in the big picture, not in the moment, because it's a thing of passion and your guy gets hit.
Sure.
But what happens if, I agree, it's ridiculous. A guy gets hit with a fair hit, a clean hit, and then everybody's got to jump on him or do the fake tough thing where they come after the guys. On the other hand, and I've seen this with Islander fans, I've seen this with fans of other teams too, and I get it, but if that guy is there on the ground and nobody responds, then it's like, where was the team? They're soft. Why aren't they responding? So, I think the way, Bob Nystrom, just to drop one name, would tell you how to handle it is you continue the play, you move on, and then if, fair hit or not, then if you're the Devils, you then try to make your good, hard, clean hit against Romanov. That, if there's a code, and I know there's a fighting code, that's usually what it is.
Yeah.
But now it's like everybody's got to make a scene. Everybody's got to look like they're tough, And by the way, I'm not tough. I'm not trying to be the fake podcast tough guy. I'm just saying that this has gotten ridiculous, and I think it all goes back, Sean, to the guys doing what they think is the right thing to do, and it happens to not. A lot of times you wind up in the box, and it's great.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing, is how that philosophy on the ice has changed, where the players feel there's some sort of obligation now. If your guy gets laid out, whether it's clean or not, you got to go and defend his honor, right? And I get that to a degree, but when it's clean, I think there's a little more like you acknowledge the fact that, look, it was a good hit. You know what I'm saying? Like, because Romanov even mentioned this himself. He ended up having to serve 5 minutes for a fight, literally just for defending himself. Now, granted, the instigator went the other way, which is the right call, but Romanov's getting pulled off the ice for 5 minutes because he laid a great clean hit on somebody. It just doesn't make sense.
And he's in a tough spot there too, Sean, because, it would be great if he just took it and the other team got everything, right?
Yeah.
But there's a pride factor there too, that you're not going to turtle.
Of course. Yeah, you got to defend yourself.
So, listen, I get it, especially in the heat of the moment for these players. It's tough to decide the right thing to do. I guess what I'm suggesting is this: if the coaches just implement an overall philosophy of this thing, which is if one of our guys gets hit with a clear, clean hit, that isn't a reason for all of us to jump on him.
I agree. I don't get it, but this is the new way of the NHL, and it's something we have to get used to. But I guess it's why the instigator's in place, and at least they utilized it, right? If they had made that even, it would have been a joke.
Yeah, they got it right.
Right, yeah, for sure. All right, so big win. Nice little turnaround. The Islanders were on the schneid a little bit in early December, and that was a big win to come out with. And, you go into last night, they come home, obviously a big night, the return of the reverse retro. I'm obviously wearing the OG right here, the original fisherman. I had to fish this out of the closet. Found it was in decent enough condition, so never thought I'd be wearing this again, but here I am, Hockey Night in New York. But a lot of festivities and fanfare going into last night's game. The Islanders went all out, I have to say. Not only did they wear the uniforms, wear the jerseys, but they had all the graphics, even leading into the game. They had the fisherman, logo on the ice, and they had the waves and the water. You walk into the building on the big screen, you had the logo up there. So they were going full throttle into this branding and the reverse retro. And it's just like never in a million years did I ever think we were going to see this thing again, let alone the push that the Islanders put behind this thing. And they really went all out. I mean, even like on the broadcast, on the scoreboard, you saw the angry fisherman up there, not the original Islander logo. So they went complete changeover to the reverse retro logo, and it was just it was something else to see. And I'll say it, and I'm sure there's a portion of the fan base that's going to look at me and say, "Yeah, go F yourself," or whatever the case may be. But they look good out there. They look good on the ice. I mean, maybe the performance wasn't great, and I'm sure it just adds a little more fuel to that fire to get rid of the damn thing because they lost 3-0 last night. But it's here.
There's little doubt that in staff meetings for the team or within staffers amongst themselves, in the last week or two, the line was uttered. Somebody would say, and this was probably happened more than a couple of times, was, it would be really, really good if in this first game where we wear the fisherman jersey, we get a win, because that'll answer everything. And that's just not the way things go, right?
Of course.
You retire a number. I think actually we won most of the games that the Islanders played, even when we were bad, when we retired numbers. I remember getting beat badly in one of them. But a lot of times that has this overall stain to it now, right? So it turns out that it couldn't not have been, for the people who really don't like it, who said it's going to make them play bad, which is silly because that's not, it doesn't happen about, or it's going to harken back to that day. Maybe playing right after playing Jersey wasn't the greatest game to pick. I think Carolina, to talk about the hockey game, we'll come back to the fishermen because I do want to get your thoughts, if not now, then later on. Mm-hmm. Just quick one on the game is, give a lot of credit to Carolina.
Sure.
The team that's rested versus the team that played, usually the advantage goes in the beginning of the game. This is what hockey people, of which I am not, have told me forever, that the team that played the night before actually has a little advantage in that first period because their legs are going, whereas in this case, Carolina hadn't played for a couple of nights. And I think Carolina, Rod Brindamore, an experienced guy that's played a million NHL games, said, let's just keep this tight and not too exciting. I think the game was over at the period was over 8:07 Eastern time. I was like, wait, the period's over, right?
Right.
So I think Carolina did almost to a T everything that they would want to do. So before, and I'm sure later on we'll get back into this back-to-back issue, which I have a problem with that narrative and some of the things said on the broadcast and elsewhere. But I'll start by saying Carolina played a brilliant, brilliant game and just shut down UBS for that night.
No, they did. They kept it scoreless there for a while, and it was kind of obviously you give credit to Carolina as you just did, but a little bit of a listless effort, I think, from the Islanders. There's only 16 shots on goal, and granted, it is second of back-to-back. They have I suppose you would say, emotional win against the Devils the night before. It was a big game, and maybe the Carolina just caught the Islanders a little tired on that end of things, and they were right. But it's funny because you can twist that narrative, either which way, and you see it all the time. You can go and say, oh, well, they weren't on the ice for 5 games, so if the Islanders had blown the Canes out last night, it was because they were too rested, right? And then the other way around is if Carolina wins, oh, well, they had the rest, and the Islanders played the night before.
It's the reason why it gets tiresome is that the Islanders had just played 3 games at home against mediocre to worse opponents, and each of those games, the night before, that team played in Madison Square Garden while the Islanders were home resting. And the Islanders lost 2 of those games. 2 of those games. They beat Chicago. It was an okay effort. They lost to Nashville, and they lost to St. Louis. And so, but we never, my problem with when we go there on the broadcast is that we never hear that, Sean, the other way around.
Right.
But we heard it last night. At the end of the game, there was light booing, and Butch Goring, who I love, who should be in the Hall of Fame, who I'm thrilled his number is retired, who's a great announcer, who was good to me personally, but he says that's unfair for them to boo because the Islanders played a game the night before while Carolina was rested. And I don't like that. It seems that's something that Butch doesn't need to say because we never hear it the other way around.
For sure. So, folks, want to thank you so much for tuning into twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY, and, of course, your favorite podcast providers later on. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Eric Fichaud, former Islander and of TVA Sports, will be joining us. We'll be right back.
I don't want to hear it. It's over. I can't believe they fell short again.
Yeah, but they played so well. They made it to the semifinals 2 years in a row.
The semifinals aren't the cup. God damn it, I hate those Lightning.
They'll get another shot at it next year.
I don't even want to talk about it anymore, all right? They lost, okay? Let me just sit here and enjoy the one thing that makes me a little bit happy. This fresh, delicious, tasty, meaty, turkey-filled Blue Line combo. I eat 3 every day to help keep me strong.
Hey, Donnie, can I have one of those?
Coming right up. Talk about a blast from the Blue Line.
Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Our goal is to make you a hero.
Miss the days of mixtapes and arcades? Love the taste of a bold IPA or maybe an ice-cold lager? There's a place where all of those magical things come together. Lost Farmer Brewing Company. At 63A East 2nd Street in the heart of Mineola, Lost Farmer combines a love of the 80s and a passion for quality beer to create brews that can only be described as gnarly, radical, and totally tubular. The retro vibe of the tasting bar will amp up your nostalgia while the blend of both local and exotic ingredients amp up your taste buds. Beer not your thing? Crack open a can of cider or sip a Chardonnay on the extended patio. Order up from the snack menu, you can even bring your own. If you're more of a homebody, pick up a growler to go or order online at lostfarmerbrewing.com. And for all of Long Island's hockey fans, Lost Farmer created the delicious Stable Shaker American Lager to celebrate the newly built UBS Arena at Belmont Park. Whether you're at the stable for a hockey game, concert, or a comedy show, you can find Stable Shaker by can and draft around the arena. So raise a cup to the next cup with Lost Farmer Brewery, the future of Long Island craft beer.
Some time to our sponsors. Ready to talk more Isles? The train rolls on right here on Hockey Night in New York.
Welcome back to Hockey Night in New York. We are now joined by the former Islanders goaltender and the analyst for TVA Sports, and that's Eric Fichaud. How are you, Eric?
I'm really good, thank you.
Thanks for doing this. It's Chris, and you're also joined by Sean. I know you had a game, the 3 o'clock game today, so thanks for squeezing us in tonight. How'd the game go tonight?
It went pretty good, actually. Colorado won. I was doing the St. Louis-Colorado game, so it wasn't the best game that I've seen, but at least we had some overtime, and Colorado ended up winning.
All right. I know you're doing a great job over there at TVA. It's so great to see you being a color commentator now, my friend. To bring you on, I would love to get your take now that you've seen Ilya Sorokin continuing to be at his best as a goaltender yourself with a love for the craft. How do you rank Sorokin?
Well, I know lately it's been a little harder for him, but overall he's been amazing. And honestly, you look at his number, and even with Varlamov, I think the Islanders have the best goalie tandem in the league. Varlamov is a great goalie. He used to be a number one, and last year maybe we saw the change with Sorokin maybe becoming the number one guy. But Varlamov is, if he's not a number one guy, is by far the best backup goalie in the NHL. And Sorokin, if you look at his numbers, if he just keep going in that direction, he could be a nominee for a Vezina Trophy, no doubt in my mind. He has the potential to do it, and it's a big surprise because a lot of goalies that we've seen in the last few years that were good in the KHL, we had big expectation from them, but as soon as they came to the NHL, I guess the change of the style of the game was harder for them, and they didn't have the success that we were hoping for. But Sorokin, I got to be honest with you, he is better than I thought, and the way that the transition in the NHL is even, it's amazing what he's been able to do, and he's the real deal. I think he's going to be a good number one goalie for a lot of years for the Islanders.
When he is at his best, again, as a fellow goaltender, what is it that you see in him so what are his particular set of skills? What is it that he does best when he's on his game?
Well, he's an athletic goalie, so he's really flexible. We see him doing some amazing saves, but also he's got a good technique because now in today's NHL, there's so many skills players. So obviously, the speed is one factor for goalie, but you have to be a good technically goalie, and I think he has the potential to be even better because as soon as you have a good technique, and if you add your physical abilities with that, it's interesting what he is actually, but what he can even become. So the fact that I've seen him make some big saves because he's doing the splits or just a reflex save, but also I've seen him make some technical save because he's in the right position. That's what impressed me the most, and I like that. I like having a goalie that is a good technical goalie, but also if when the time comes, you have to make that split or you have to make that big save, and he's also able to do that. So that's a gift that not too many guys have, and he's certainly impressive, since he's been in the NHL.
When a goalie is kind of it's helping to carry a team to success. What's that like in the locker room? In other words, how popular must Ilya Sorokin be in the Islanders locker room these days?
He doesn't pay a lot of dinners on the road. that's for sure. But it gives a lot of confidence, and obviously, working in Montreal, we've seen Carey Price for so many years being dominate, in the Montreal with the Montreal Canadiens, and what we saw was the impact that he could have and the respect that they would have from other teams, and we could see that. And I'm sure Sorokin, if he keeps going in that in that way, you guys are gonna see a lot of that in New York because first of all, for his own teammates, it gives a lot of confidence because there's a guy that not only is going to give you a chance to win every game, but he might steal a few games also along the way. And when you have a guy like that, or even Shesterkin with the Rangers, and you have guys that every game they don't give that bad goals that hurts you. And that makes a big difference for any NHL teams. And I think guys just have more confidence playing, in front of him, and it can make a big impact in the long run. And because of the Islanders having that defensive style since the Barry Trotz era, and now you see it with a new coach, if you put those two together, well, you have a team that is in the playoff right now. And I didn't think the Islanders were going to make playoffs. I wasn't sure, and I was still wondering about the offensive of the team. Defensively, I knew they had a good defensive game and they had, two good goalies. But it's a big surprise for me this year. I'm really happy they're doing good. And, when you play good defensively, another good thing's going to happen.
Hey, Eric, how's it going? Sean here. Thanks a lot for coming on. So I want to talk to you a little bit about your career with the Islanders and obviously all the fanfare going on about the fisherman coming back. But before we do, I just wanted to ask a question about the goaltending position. How has it evolved since your time in the NHL to now, talking about guys like Ilya Sorokin and Shesterkin? How's the goaltending position changed since you were in the league?
It changed a lot. First of all, goalies are way bigger now. Back in my days, I'm 5'11", 180 pounds. I was probably playing 170 pounds with the Islanders.
Wow.
So now you see guys at 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", 230 pounds, moving like they're 180 pounds. That's impressive for me. So guys are bigger, guys are faster, and obviously technique has evolved also. You see a lot of guys playing that reverse VH. You see guys on their posts. And because over the years, I mean, I guess goalie coaches realize the game is all around the net and a lot of dead angle shots. So they create that technique, try to cover the most of the net, being that reverse VH. So you see guys on their knees, but they're able to push. So what impressed me the most is, seeing guys being that big, being that fast. I mean, they're way better than we were. Obviously, everything evolved, but it's impressive to see, like guys like Vasilevsky and, Shesterkin. They don't make a lot of mistakes. And when it's time to make that big save, they'll make that split. They'll do it. But technically, it's amazing the amount of bad goals that you can cut down when you have a good technique. And that's what I see in NHL goalies these days.
Yeah, for sure, and they're a lot of fun to watch. So with all the fanfare around the fisherman jersey coming back, I saw you actually got involved. You were interviewed. I saw a piece on NHL.com, and you actually shared a story. I think it was also with Nick Hirshon with his We Want Fish Sticks book, that you actually liked the jersey back when they had it. It's funny, we had Darius Kasparidis on not too long ago, and he was saying how most of the guys in the locker room weren't a fan of it, but you yourself had a good experience with it?
Well, I didn't mind it because it was my first experience in the NHL. So for me, that logo, that's what it reminds me. It reminds me of my first NHL game.
Right.
Reminds me when I was able, to realize my dream of playing in the NHL. And I guess because of, those experience, I had maybe a different version of the logo. Looking back now, I mean, I prefer the old logo. I prefer the original, with the history, with the Stanley Cups and everything. But because I was only 20 years old and, it was my first time in the NHL, I didn't know anything else. So that's the first thing that comes to my mind when I see the logo is, starting playing with the Islanders. So, and I had a great time on the island. And unfortunately, we didn't have the success that we were hoping for. And looking back, I'm always wondering if we have one more games, and if we had made a playoff and had a good run, I'm wondering if people will see that logo differently than now, because we had such a hard time during those years. So the logo is kind of connected with that era.
Oh, there's no question about it, Eric. And I think that perspective is great because I think fans can relate to that, especially fans my age who were young kids, maybe even young teenagers at the time, where that's where we really became fans of it. So as you became a player of the team, we kind of developed our fandom of the team during that era. So there's a lot of people, that still embrace the logo and the jersey just like you, because that's when you fell in love with the team, So I can definitely relate to that on your end. And you debuted against Dominik Hasek. In your first game, you get a 5-4 overtime win. How memorable was that for you? And is that your most memorable experience as an Islander? Or maybe you have a story you can share with us.
Well, it has to be one of it's probably the most, I would say my best memory first of all, in the NHL, because I remember getting the call a few days before. I believe it was Bob Froese, who was the goalie coach at the time, who called me and said, listen, we need you in New York. You just got called up, and you're going to play against Buffalo. So I was in Worcester. I had to drive to New York. It was before cell phone, before everything else. I was so scared to get lost on my way. I had a map, and I wrote down the road to get to New York. And I think I got there the night before. I had one practice, and I found out I was playing that game against Buffalo. And if my memory is correct, the Islanders were struggling during that time. They lost a bunch of games in a row, and it was a tough time for the team. So I remember showing up, not knowing what to expect. I knew I was playing against Buffalo and Dominik Hasek, Pat LaFontaine, who I used to go watch play when he was in Montreal playing junior. So it was kind of a big deal to play against him. And I knew I had that. I think I was like few seconds away from my first win, and who ended up tying the game was Pat LaFontaine. made it 4-4, went to overtime. I think Matthew Schneider scored the overtime winner. I must have hugged him for like 5 minutes. I was so happy just to get the first win. But things went it went so fast. I mean, the first shot that I had, I think if I remember correctly, I had like a shot from, I think, the red line or something. I gave a long rebound, and I made a pretty good save on that rebound. And the crowd got into it, and I was so nervous. And as the game went on, I kind of lost that nervousness, and I became more focused and just trying to calm down. And you got to say at one point, listen, I'm in the NHL now. It's not time to be starstruck or whatever. You got to focus. You got a game to win, and end up winning that first game in overtime. So it was the best case scenario for me.
Awesome.
Brian, I don't know if you know, Eric, but Brian Berard made a cameo appearance about 2 or 3 minutes on the pre-game show yesterday on the Islanders broadcast, your good buddy. And, it was just fun to watch Brian. Like, the minute this era was brought up, not just the fisherman jersey, but the players and everybody. And I was there, and obviously you didn't win as much as any of us would have hoped. But just a big smile comes to Brian's face, and he says, that, and of course, this time with the Leafs, 1-2 or 2-1. He is right there, the biggest moments of his career. So can you just give the fans a sense of, yes, as you mentioned, the wins sometimes were hard to come by. You were a young group, but how much you all bonded together on Long Island, how much the fans meant to you, what it was like for you as a 20-year-old, 21-year-old to be on Long Island back then, and the spirit around the team.
I mean, I loved it. I love Long Island. I honestly thought I could live there like forever. Like I really fell in love with this, with the city, with the people, with, and I guess the fact that it was the first time in the NHL and meeting Brian. Brian was only 19 at the time, and we became really close. I mean, I lived with him and Brian McCabe. So as you can imagine, being 19, 20, 21, 21 in the NHL, it was a lot of fun. And I guess for him, I mean, he won the Calder. So he had Brian had a lot of good memories in Long Island, and it was the same for me. We had a good bunch of guys, and we obviously wish we could have won more games, but I still remember the great friendships that we had with a lot of guys, with Derek King and Scott Lachance and Marty McInnes, all those guys. We were a young team. I mean, we had a lot to learn, but I think looking back, I have great memories about that time. Just learning to become a professional player. That's the hardest thing for any young guys in the league, is just learning to be a pro. And I guess we're not ready. Maybe for myself, maybe playing one more year in the minor would have been, better for me, but you're so excited to be in the big league. And I have no regret from the days, from my years on the island. Just great memories. Even if we didn't win as many games as I was, as I hope we would have won, it was still a great time for me.
I'm glad that you brought up your roommates and the housing there, because you mentioned it to me. You mentioned it to me last year, and it dawned on me after we hung up that, like, and maybe you can give some perspective, but when Tavares joined the Islanders at 18, 19, he lived with the guy, the former Bruin defenseman. And so a lot of times guys are
Dennis Seidenberg.
Yes, Dennis Seidenberg. A lot of times guys are paired up now. You get the feeling there's more coaching and player experience things. I know that's the case in other sports. Yeah. And I was 30, I guess, around that time. But in looking back, it almost feels reckless to me that the team let a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 21-year-old. You guys were good and well behaved, I'm sure, but just in terms of
we were
not. But just in terms of development, was that in hindsight? Okay, if you were going to work for a team, you probably would. Was that just asinine? I'm sorry. What were your thoughts on that, Fish?
Honestly, I mean, maybe the reason that they decide that John Tavares was going to live with a player is because of us. They didn't want to make the same mistake.
We learned. Those who did not learn from history. Yes, exactly.
But you're 100% right. I think looking back, it would have been better for us to maybe live with a veteran, or you don't want to have 3 young guys living in the same house. That's for sure. I mean, you have one French Canadian, one American, and one Canadian from Calgary. bonding. But you know what? It was great because we all came from different backgrounds. They were making fun of my French accent. I was making fun, of different things. But
Nice.
But overall, we got along. And the thing is, you spend so much time with your roommate because you live with him, you play hockey with him. I mean, you don't even spend as much time with your wife. It's crazy. I mean, you go on the road. I mean, you practice every single day. Plus, you travel with your roommate. You come back home. We used to go. Every day we go for lunch. We go to Vincent for probably five times a week. Go to Vincent for dinner. Go see movies or whatever. So you spend a lot of time. But if you think about hockey, maybe it would have been better to have like somebody else living with us, or just trying to have a better support. Looking back, what I was saying, learning to become a professional player could have been easier maybe with a veteran living with me or somebody else, but because we were learning everything else in the same time. So I guess maybe not the best way. And if you look now, every 18 or 19-year-old playing NHL, I mean, either their parents come to live with them or they're going to live with a veteran. They don't do that. They don't do what we did with us.
We're talking to Eric Fichaud on the line here. And Eric, just to comment on that, it's funny you mentioned your roommates and everything. I'm pretty sure that I have a poster rolled up in a closet somewhere of yourself, Kenny Janssen, Brian McCabe, and I think Brian Berard. I think it said like Future Stars or something like that. So you're still in the closet somewhere. But just going back to what I said before, I mean, that was when my fandom really, came up. But, we were very excited to have you guys in the team as young fans back then.
Well, we were excited also, and I remember going to Booster Club's meetings or Booster Club's events, and the people were cheering for us. I mean, we could see how much the game meant to the fans, and we heard so much about the 4 Stanley Cups and that 80s, that era with Bossy, Trottier, and all the stars. And the thing is hard. The thing that is hard for young players that come, you want to write your own history.
Right.
You respect what was done before, but you cannot live in the past. You try to create something for yourself, and that's what we were hoping to do. Unfortunately, it didn't happen for different reasons. But I remember that the fans. I mean, we used to leave a game and have bodyguard walking us to our car, and the fans were so. I would say like it was so intense, and especially when we play Rangers, you have Ranger fans, Islander fans, and it was fun because I mean we knew we could be better. We knew we had the support of the fans, but I mean sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. In our case, it didn't work, but and at one point, some players started getting traded, some players started getting sent down to the minor. That's just a reality of the game. It's a business. You need to win. If you don't win, you're going to lose your job.
Well, Eric, awesome stuff. The last one from me, the new Islanders ownership, John Ledecky, Scott Malkin, they've done a great job reaching out to Islanders alumni, getting them back involved, communicating. Have they reached out to you? Have they had any sort of communication with yourself? And have you been back to UBS Arena yet to see the new digs playing in the old Coliseum back then that everybody was waiting to replace even back then?
No, I haven't been back to I've been back to the island, but I haven't seen the new building. Looking forward to it. And I've met John, obviously. He came down for Mike Bossy's funeral, so I met John a few times, and he was always talking about trying to bring the alumni guys back on the island, and that's the thing I really appreciated, starting to bring back that culture. All the old players trying to get back together, and I have the chance to go back every summer. Joe McMahon, my equipment guy with the Islanders back in the days, he has a golf tournament, and there's always a bunch of guys playing, so it's fun to see them. But I'm going to try to see the new building. I'd like to come down on the island. Maybe I know there's going to be something special in a few months for the 50th anniversary, so I'm probably going to try to go on the island for that special night.
Well, that would be fantastic, Eric. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your night.
Very much appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Take care, bud.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Thanks.
that was great Islanders alum Eric Fichaud from back in the fisherman days, reminiscing about the jersey, about the times, about perhaps the shenanigans he got involved in with his old roommates. What was that, down in Long Beach, down in Lido Beach? I think a lot of guys lived down there back then, right?
Yeah, but good, clean fun. I mean,
Of course.
I know, he jokes, but they were always ready to play. Just too young. You'd have, you mentioned Matthew Schneider getting the goal. And
Yeah.
Clark. You had this, I think this, Dennis Seidenberg.
So actually, I wanted to bring that up.
I got them mixed up.
So I'm pretty sure John Tavares roomed with Doug Waite.
Right?
And Matt Barzell stayed with Seidenberg.
There you go. See what happens when I'm away from the team and I count on you for this era, the last 10 years. Good. But that proves the point exactly. It's perfect. There was this weird combination. It was mostly youth with just a couple of random veterans.
Right.
And it just didn't work. But they were all just the greatest guys who gave their all, who were great in the community. You sense it with Fichaud. He's a joyful guy, and they all were. And it was a pleasure to be around them.
Oh, yeah, and it was a fantastic interview. Great to have him on the show. And, Matthew Schneider's name comes up, and it kind of took me down a little bit of a rabbit hole thinking of guys like him and guys like Wendell Clark, who came to this team, kind of stars in the league at that time, right? And, you being there, I mean, what was the general attitude? I mean, we know how Kirk Muller felt when he came to the New York Islanders, but when a guy like Clark or Schneider comes to Long Island, when they're struggling the way they did, I mean, did they make the best of it? Was there grumble? I mean, obviously you don't have to reveal anything you don't want to,
no, I'm happy to.
But was there a general, did they embrace the challenge of coming to the island and playing under those circumstances?
They did. Matthew Schneider is from New York. His dad lived in New York. Threw himself into the community. Wendell Clark was great. The Kirk Muller thing aside, and that was a big one, and that hurt, and for a lot of reasons, it didn't make sense.
Right.
And I know it was a surprise to Don Maloney that Kirk Muller didn't accept being here. The whole thing, all that was strange.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else who came through or rolled through, I mean, I was like, wow, Wendell Clark's on our team.
Right, exactly.
That was, for me, right? I was just like, hey, I'm getting to meet Wendell Clark.
Sure.
He was just weird. Matthew Schneider the same way. And then some of the lesser-known veterans that would come through. So, but no, anything that didn't work, it was not for a lack of trying on the player's part. I could assure you that.
Yeah, it's great to hear because, look, as we do, there's always chatter, and you wonder, what kind of attitude a player has. And I guess when you have and see firsthand examples like Kirk Muller, you wonder, just what sort of approach that these players take. We're like, oh, man. And whether it's the Islanders or not, right? I'm going to the Coyotes. They're in the basement. They're playing on a college campus, for crying out loud. Like, you wonder, I mean, these guys are professionals, sure, but, you have your choice of 32 teams. I'm sure you favor some more than others.
And also, they're smart enough to know that, let's say, in the case of Wendell, and this happens to not be the case, sure, that he's just like, oh, I don't want to be here or whatever. The only way, it's like somebody being sent down to the minors. You could grumble and even take a day or two to mourn, but the only way to get out of that predicament is to play well and to be a good teammate. And, in the case of Wendell, he was eventually traded for Kenny Janssen.
Right.
So he found his way back to Toronto, if that's something he wanted to, there's these things work themselves out as long. It's no different in any job. It's no in hockey or non-sports.
Right.
Like, the only way you're going to figure your way out of something is by working as hard as you can and giving your best effort, and then trying to see what happens if you land somewhere else.
And now that we have Wendell Clark's name came up, that was
Wendell Clark show.
No, that was a big three-way deal because I'm curious. Hey, look, you were there, so I'm curious. So that was, maybe to the chagrin of some Islanders fans back then, because Steve Thomas ends up getting sent over to Jersey, right? It was a three-way deal, right? He goes to Jersey, Lemieux goes to Jersey, and then I think, or maybe Colorado, and then Clark ends up coming to the Islanders, right? So that was always the intention of Mike Milbury, was to get Wendell Clark. They never had any they weren't entertaining the thought of keeping Claude Lemieux on the island, right? Like he was just a means
Correct.
to get Wendell Clark.
Yeah, it was a three-way. And whether it's Mike Milbury or anywhere else, what I will say is sometimes teams think, and this was definitely the case with Mike, sometimes teams think that they overrate leadership. That, okay, we got this problem. We got this team that isn't good. But if we get Wendell Clark here, or later on, it was, they signed Ron Sutter and Mike Huff as free agents.
Oh, wow.
That's usually not the answer. This thing of bringing over cups or bringing over leadership, generally does not work. Somebody pointed out to me, in the media guide that I have, that's the first one, and I could have this wrong, but just the media guide I have has Steve Thomas in the fisherman jersey. But Steve never wound up. Maybe he came up with Ray Ferraro and we had him on.
Yes.
But Steve never wound up playing a game
right.
in the fisherman jersey. And you know what? It says everything about my respect for Steve that I'm happy that he wasn't part of that.
There you have it. So great stuff from Eric. Great reminiscent about the old fisherman days, if you will. But folks, we're going to take a break here. I want to thank you so much for tuning in to twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. And of course, your favorite podcast providers later on. We'll take that break. When we come back, it's time for What's on Tap.
New York Islanders fans, Sunday night is hockey night in New York. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, tune in to Hockey Night in New York. Catch us live from Floored Media in Rockville Center, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, as we cover all things Islanders at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. All episodes are also available on YouTube and all your favorite podcast providers. And for all you social butterflies, you can follow at Hockey Night NY on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for all the latest updates. Hockey Night in New York, the best night of the week for any Islanders fan. Hey there, welcome back. We missed you too. Now kick up your feet and settle back in to Hockey Night in New York.
Welcome back to Hockey Night in New York, ladies and gentlemen, watching live on twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. Now, before we get into what's on tap, been a lot of questions here. Where's Christian Arnold been? Where's the guy gone? We know he's been very busy. So look, I wanted to at least come halfway here and satisfy a little bit. Christian making a small appearance here on the show while we wait for his triumphant return, if and when that ever happens. So there you go, Christian. He looks great. Look at that. So he's going to join us for What's on Tap and probably for the rest of the show. Not going to say much, but there he is, folks. So What's on Tap? Obviously, we had the midweek show on Wednesday, and we're looking at next week. The Islanders are hitting the road. A couple games coming up here, starting in Boston on Tuesday. It gets a little easier on Friday, then it kind of ramps up back a little bit up after that. You got Arizona Friday. They're going to spend their first night in Mullet Arena, so that'll be interesting. Looking forward to seeing how that goes. And then they go into Las Vegas in the desert on Saturday. Chris, what do you say?
I want to talk about this game in Boston.
Okay.
And I'm the first to say I'm tired of the back-to-backs and all that narrative, but this is an interesting one for me.
Okay.
We see that they're playing Boston, and we think, well, Boston's great. And Boston doesn't lose at home, or they lose in overtime at home once in a while. And that's a game that the Islanders are going to be underdogs in.
Right.
But the Boston Bruins, as we talk right now, are playing a game in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Okay.
And that game is going to end at 10:30, 11 o'clock our time.
Sure.
And then about an hour and a half, 2 hours later, they're going to charter home across the country and then get to their beds, whatever that might be.
Sure. 5-6 hours later.
Yeah, right.
Right.
So you see what I'm getting at here. If we're to look at who might have an advantage, the Islanders, on the other hand, I believe they had a day off today or a light day. Okay, they will charter tomorrow. Their flight will leave at around 2:30 tomorrow. They'll be in Boston, and they'll check into the hotel at 4 o'clock. They'll have either a team dinner or they'll do their own thing and have a great Italian dinner.
Sure.
So if you're going into Tuesday
Right.
Who's like better positioned to play a better game? Coming off a road trip where Boston played in Arizona, played Colorado, and then tonight they're playing in Las Vegas of all places.
So what you're saying, Chris, is that the Islanders don't have any excuses Tuesday night.
No, in fact, the Islanders they're not going to be favored, but the Islander fans should have an expectation that this is a game that they can win. I won't go so far as to say should win.
Okay.
But also it will be said in that locker room that for all the guys who hit on this team, which is more than half of them, like get to Boston early. Boston is not going to be that physically or mentally into this game early on.
Okay.
So this is the time to get to it.
Well, hey, they went and did it in Jersey, right? So why not Boston?
Correct.
There we go. Okay, I like that attitude. All right, we'll see what happens. So Arizona Friday, struggling team, but of course, Arizona shut the Islanders out the last time they played them at UBS, so all bets are off there.
Islanders own one.
There you go. A little revenge game, yeah, for sure. Well, look, if they play their backup again, then it's no go. I mean, I talked with Stefan about this last week. If the Islanders are playing a team's backup, they're pretty much toast because they lost to Carolina's backup last night. I mean, it just for whatever the reason is, there's no rhyme or reason to it, but they always seem to struggle against these teams' backup goalies. But,
and then Vegas, and you just really don't know what you're going to get there.
Yeah, well, look, you got Jack Eichel over there. They've been one of the beasts in the West now, and they're going to be up there with Colorado for the rest of the season. That'll be a tough game, but a fun one to watch. I got to get over there to T-Mobile Arena. I hear it's fantastic over there.
I'm going to Vegas in late February. There are 2 games while I'm there. Might get to one.
Very nice. Love it. Going to have to hear about that.
Yeah, you'll need somebody else Christian will come in that Sunday.
That would be great. Look at him. There he is. Fresh-faced Christian.
I'm going to give him 2.5 months notice that he needs to come in.
He might need more than that. All right, folks. That's going to do it for What's on Tap. 3 big games coming up. Let's see if they can recover after this dissatisfying loss to the Carolina Hurricanes. So with that, we're going to go right into Hero of the Week. So folks, when you hear this song, that means it's time for the Hero of the Week, brought to you by the Blue Line Deli Bagels Half Price Hero, which this week is the Blue Liner, featuring chicken cutlet, bacon, melted American cheese, Russian dressing on a toasted garlic hero. Delicious. Stop on in to the Blue Line Deli Bagels Huntington location, mention Hockey Night New York, and get half off the Blue Liner. So Chris, who is your hero of the week?
My hero of the week is, again, Brock Nelson. Not only for his 2 goals on Friday in the win against New Jersey, but he's a player, maybe a little bit of a slow start to season. Just we're talking about the first week or 2.
It wasn't Brocktober.
But now, Grovember, Breezember, whatever the hell you want to call it.
Breezember.
That doesn't even make any sense.
Mark that one down.
Listen, utmost respect. An incredible player. A very, very close second are the public relations people with the Islanders for New York Hockey Holdings. Whoever managed the Fisherman return, you could say what you want with it, but as somebody who makes a living in PR, big time respect for how they managed that. They got the jersey in the hands of influencers.
Right, yeah.
Just the whole...
A lot of promotion.
Yeah, the coverage was good. I was in an athletic article by Kevin and
yes,
on an NHL.com. Good articles. Didn't always agree with some of my peers' theories about the Fisherman jersey and how it came to be, but I thought the Islanders people who do that, which I think is probably more on the corporate side than like the hockey PR people, but whoever it was, A+.
Yeah, I saw they gifted a jersey to E.J. Raddick and Jackie Redmond over at NHL Network. Yeah, they were spreading it around. They were getting it out there for sure. It's a moneymaker, folks. Everybody's cashing in. I'm telling you, I was in the building for that night. They already had the reverse retro jerseys. Half the building was wearing them already. So love it or hate it, it's here and it's probably here to stay. So with that in mind, you talk about the Islanders PR team, and I think my hero is actually an extension of that, and that is none other than a forgotten man, a forgotten hero in my eyes, if you will, and that's none other than Niles. This guy's been gone for a long time. Could have been lost at sea. We have no idea. We don't know where he's been, what he's been up to, but the New York Islanders brought him back last night for the return of the Fisherman jersey, the Fisherman logo on reverse retro night, and the guy looks great. Looks like he shed a couple of pounds. He was out in the concourse, high-fiving, giving hugs. It was fantastic.
So he was all. So I saw a picture.
Had the light on his head.
I
and
saw
everything.
Nick Hirshon posted a picture like
Yes.
he was in an elevator with like one other person and
Yes.
Niles, and I was like because I wasn't expecting it. I was kind of thrown off by that, but he was very present.
Yes.
Was he anywhere in the aisles during the game?
I did not specifically see him in the aisles in the crowd, but I saw him in the concourse. He was up and down the arena, and whoever
By
that.
the way, I shouldn't presume it's a he. By the way,
that's fair.
Niles.
Well, the character is a he.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, there's a beard and everything, so that's a guy.
Okay. You know what? We better get off this subject quick. I screwed that up. Let's move on. Keep on talking about Niles, but I don't want to go there.
So, yes, Niles in the building. He's back. I give all the credit in the world to the New York Islanders, and I know there's fans out there that hate it, the whole damn thing, but to have the balls to bring this guy back after all the hatred and whatnot, I was floored because I remember joking about bringing him back, like when they would talk about the fisherman coming back and all that, I'd be like, well, you got to bring Niles back. You got to bring Niles back. And like always, half jokingly knowing it's never going to happen. So when Nick Hirshon posted that picture of him, I squealed like a girl on the inside, like a chick at a Harry Styles concert.
And was Niles on the scoreboard? Was he shown? Was there a reaction? Was there?
I didn't see him on the board, but I did see that there was a picture of Sparky and Niles together, kind of pointing at each other, sort of thing. So it was acknowledged, it was embraced. So I'm very curious to see. I'd like to think he'll be back for all the reverse retro nights, right?
Yeah.
And it would be my hope and desire that even after this reverse retro thing is over, that we see some appearances from him, because I want him at my birthday party next year.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Niles, I can arrange that if you'd like.
We're gonna talk after the show.
You got it.
So heroes of the week, Brock Nelson, still playing stellar for the New York Islanders, leading the charge there in the goals, and just clutch goals too, big goals. So he was a huge guy in that New Jersey Devils game. And Niles, he's back. I cannot believe it. I'm waiting for somebody to pinch me because I do think I'm dreaming. So there you have it, the heroes. What do you got?
So the Islanders, both when I was there, they've only had two mascots.
Yeah,
Niles, who was a product of the fisherman jersey.
That's right.
And Sparky the Dragon.
The Dragon.
And you know why we had a dragon mascot?
Charles Wong, the Arena Football Team.
Football League team.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
None of this makes
the New York Dragons.
Fucking sense
whatsoever. No, you had to reach and say, oh, well, the dragon probably grew up on an island, or by the lighthouse.
But I have a feeling there are people now who don't know why he was a dragon. Because the teams were far enough removed from Aaron Garcia and the New York Dragons.
It makes no sense. You could probably actually pull this off to somebody not in the know and say, oh yeah, well, Game of Thrones is really popular, so they wanted to get a dragon in there. You know what I mean? No, it doesn't make any sense. But the kids love him.
Good.
He's got a hockey stick for a tail. He's great.
Good.
So
Niles used to early on scared the Jesus out of.
Well, I believe there was a redesign of his head,
little softening.
Yes, he was menacing at first.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and then they gave him a little smile and turned things around.
Hey, listen, the one thing I just want to call complete and utter bullshit on when it comes to some of the stories that were written, and enjoyed all the stories.
Yeah,
they're just reporting. But one of the theories that was espoused was that the reason why the Islanders went to the fisherman logo in 1995 was because the new owners, who had been around for a little over 2 years, were concerned about the new guys and being intimidated by the dynasty and all that. And
it's fascinating.
And that is not true.
Okay.
That is complete.
Okay.
For starters, it takes like a year and a half to change a logo in Jersey and things like that. The guys had just gotten there. The bottom line is the Gang of Four, whatever you want to say about them, about the change, they just decided they wanted to have their own imprint on it. They wanted to change it up. They wanted to sell jerseys. The idea that there was some sort of psychological thing where they're thinking, Fish and McCabe and Bertuzzi are going to be, the idea of wearing that Islander crest is heavy on their chest.
Right. How am I going to go out on the ice?
The years don't make sense mathematically. None of it does. I know why they changed the jersey, and it was just a change. There was no deep thought into that.
There you have it, folks. There's the facts straight from Chris Botta. Very interesting stuff. So, all right, we'll move on from the hero. It's time to field some questions, so I hope we're a little active in the chat. Ed, Jay, how we doing over there, boys?
We are back.
We're back.
We are back.
Okay,
We're
so
back.
so what's
behind
going
the
on
glass.
over there?
Oh well, before we get started, I've been stirring up an idea.
Oh boy, this is terrifying. Yes.
Yeah, we need to do a rendition of "Where Are You Christmas," but replace Christmas with Christian.
Wow. You know, I actually love that idea. That's
I think we
pretty
need to
good.
get that on
Christian,
the
what do you
show
think
next
about
week.
that? He's got nothing to
I
say.
think he loves it.
All right,
Anyway,
love that.
we're
We'll
gonna
work
start
on
with
that
D. Boyle.
behind the scenes. Yeah. What do you got?
D. Boyle says, "If the Islanders miss the playoffs, do you see Lou getting fired?" Yeah, it's a good idea, isn't it?
You know, what a difference a week makes, man. You know, like they win a couple of games, everybody's saying who they're gonna face in the playoffs, and now they have a rough go, and we're talking about Lou getting fired if they miss the playoffs. Anything's possible. Chris and I have talked about the length of his contract, whether he'll re-up, he'll stick around if the torch gets passed to Chris Lamoriello at some point or somebody else. Let's get to the halfway point of the season, I think, before we start worrying about that. I personally do not think Lou gets fired if they miss the playoffs, because I think Ledecky and Malkin have so much confidence and faith in him, but I'll defer to Chris.
I don't know how this works, if these things can get recorded and saved and thrown back in my face. Let me be clear here. In the year 2023, no matter the scenario, Lou Lamoriello is not going to get fired.
There you have
Emphasis,
it.
not going to get fired
There you have
in 2023, no matter what happens.
There you go. It's in the archives, so we'll refer back to it when we get to June, July.
Love it.
What do you got, Ed?
All right, from Mike, 4652. Any chance Uncle Lou makes a trade prior to the deadline, or is he committed to waiting to the very last moment? He sure took his time during free agency.
His history is actually to get a jump in when he made more trades. He'd sometimes have that surprise early trade, or whether he's selling, whether he's buying. So do I think he's going to make a trade before the trade deadline? Yes. Is it possible that it could be a little bit of a early February surprise, late January surprise? Yes, that's a possibility too. When it comes to the Patrick Kane and whoever else might be the big fish, if we could use these kind of analogies now, metaphors, whatever.
It's very appropriate.
Is sometimes you want to maybe even overpay early and give, in this case, the Blackhawks, for example, if he's telling us if we do this now, here's the package. And by the way, I know there's also some of these trades that are out where the player's going to have to approve where he goes. That's a big part of it too.
Right,
So
right.
answer your question, he's going to make a trade before the trade deadline, at least one trade before the trade deadline. And it could come. It could very well come surprisingly earlier, meaning 3 or 4 weeks, not 2:59 that day.
If there's anything we learned from the viewers here, is that they're definitely ready for a trade, because it's coming up every week. And look, everybody knows what the need is, so we'll see if they get a score. Ed, what's next?
Coach Lambert is up next.
Hey,
My man. The Islanders are in trouble if Pelech misses significant time. Who's more critical to their chances of success, Pelech or Barzal?
interesting question, because I figured Sorokin would have been the second name in that question, but I think the Islanders, and this might sound like blasphemy to some of you guys out there, but they might be able to manage a little more if Barzal was out long term compared to Pelech. I think that Pelech might be a bigger hit just because they're not as deep defensively right now, and they're going to be relying on guys like Salo and Aho long term. So hopefully Pelech isn't out for a while. So to answer your question, I'm going to say Pelech would be a more painful loss if you had to compare the two.
How would they manage when you say? I'm not disagreeing with you. Mm-hmm. I'm curious as to your answer. When you say that they would manage being out with Barzal, how would they manage that?
Well, I think this is a team that already has to spread their offense out, right? I mean, especially seeing how much is coming from the defense these days. But there's not that one guy who's basically responsible for all their offense, right? We just talked about Brock Nelson and how much of a key he's been to this team. He doesn't even play on Matt Barzal's line, right? So he's doing it without Matt Barzal. Now, sure, they might see each other on the power play and whatnot, but I think for a team that and also has actually proven they can score a little bit compared to last year, right? Because that was a huge concern. I think that that's something. Now, will they manage it to perfection? Will it not result in losses? That's not what I'm saying. But I think that that's something that they can manage a little better by committee with the depth of forwards that they have, compared to having to try to limp through however many games without Adam Pelech on the defensive end.
I have some optimism. We can't play doctor here. It's stupid to ever do it. I believe there's some reason to be optimistic that Pelech will not be out too long.
Okay.
And it's somewhat based on the fact that when Lane Lambert was asked if he was going to be on the trip or join them later, however it was phrased, he didn't rule that out. And the reason why I say that is if there was something that was like clear-cut X-rays, something bad.
Sure.
And I do believe that Lane Lambert has some integrity. There was a thing a week or two ago where some of the guys thought he might have lied to them, and then he clarified after. I think it had to do with Wallstrom or somebody not being able to skate, and he cleared the air and apologized and said, I didn't know, whoever the player was. I think this is a man of integrity, and I think if he knew deep down that this was definitely long-term by now, a couple of days after it happened, he wouldn't say that he couldn't rule out anything. So this could be a scenario where Pelech winds up missing a week or two, which is not good. You want him there every game. No. But in terms of, long term, I see that as 4 weeks or more, let's say, right? And I believe there's some reason to, have some faith that he's going to be back, possibly even before the last road game on this trip.
Fingers crossed. Ed, what do you got?
Trotty 19 asks, should we be concerned about Sorokin? 3 losses in a row, has looked shaky with some softies given up.
Not yesterday, not Saturday.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Listen, couple of losses, and this is
He wasn't great against St. Louis.
Yeah, that was definitely the weak point of his season. But overall, again, and I know I use these terms compared to any time the Islanders struggle with anything, but 82 games, and your starting goaltender's getting into, 35 to 50 at least, right? Somewhere in that number, right? And to expect these guys to be just at their peak performance every night in, night out is just not reasonable. And that's, whether you're talking about Austin Matthews on down to your fourth liners, you're just not going to have, they're not going to have it every night. And maybe Sorokin's going through a little bit of a stretch here. I mean, I like to give him a little more credit than maybe we're giving him right now. But, he's had a couple of tough games. He's had a couple of losses. But is it a concern? Absolutely not. You heard what Eric Fichaud had to say about him early in the program. I mean, this guy is the real deal. He's absolutely going to be a finalist for the Vezina Trophy if the Islanders don't fall off a cliff this season. So, look, you just have to swallow the bad games and have confidence that he's gonna bounce back and he'll be fine.
Yeah, it's masked because they lost last night, but no matter who played goal, they were losing Saturday
16
night.
Shots. I mean,
and so he answered in a way. He, any concern about coming off of the bad game, he was good on Saturday. It was, he had a couple of dunks by Carolina.
Right.
So no, I do not see it. I do not have that concern. Trache 19.
Edward, do we have any more?
We do.
Okay.
We got, this is talking about earlier about the fights.
Okay.
T. Boyle asks, what do you think of the instigator rule? A player is coming to the aid of his teammate and he is thrown out of the game. It's ridiculous.
Well, no, it's a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
He's not really coming to the aid of his, he's not coming to the aid of his teammate. He's standing up for him. That's fine. But it's not always the case. And so, as we talked about earlier, I think we covered it pretty well, right? It's sometimes that is dumb and you're taking yourself out of the game. So I understand the instigator rule. I don't think it's always been called correctly.
No.
But
No.
but I wouldn't say it's a dumb rule.
It's definitely, however it's spelled out in the rule book, it's definitely bent a little bit when it's interpreted on the ice. But yeah, well said, Chris. Anything else?
After reading it, I think this is a jab.
Oh,
question.
Okay,
That's fine.
Where did that go?
Uh-oh.
Where did Trottier go?
Oh,
He had a funny one.
jabbing us or jabbing somebody else, or jabbing this guy?
Jabbing the aisles. Oh, here it goes. Can I get a refund or discount for games? I pay for 3 periods, but the Islanders only show up for 1 period, sometimes 2.
One of the incredible things about George Steinbrenner when he was with us and owned the Yankees, every once in a while they would just have a bad. It's baseball too, right? It's pitching. You can lose 16-3. It's not for lack of trying or anything like that.
Right.
And they'd put up on the board, in the 7th inning, anybody who came to tonight's game. Just put the guys on the field, right? Anybody who came to tonight's game, hold on to your ticket, and give you free entry to a game of your choice the next month or something like that. Okay, that was bad, and the Islanders have had some stinkers at home, and that's unfortunate. But the bottom line, Sean, is they got to get their shit together, because I did the show here 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. They were 6 games over NHL 500. They had 4 gettable games, 4 winnable games coming up.
Sure.
We know it doesn't always work out that way, right? But I talked about the importance of getting to 10 games over 500, not end the season 10 games over NHL 500, but get there and build from there. And right now there's very few teams over that. Jersey is, Boston is. I get that. Boston, I think, is, Pittsburgh's like 8 games over. But they are right now a middle-of-the-pack team. I believe this is a team that's going to make the playoffs. Yep. I've seen enough in terms of how they've come together, how they've responded to Lane Lambert, any concerns post-Trotz. I think in a lot of ways they have answered those things.
That's in the rearview window.
But they're just 5 games over NHL 500. They are another loss or 2 away from not being in one of those 2 wild card teams or 3 division teams. And, it looks good that they're 16 and 11 or 17, whatever it is, but it isn't that good. So, and by the way, I'm not saying you're getting carried away. I don't think any fans are too, but I think there's kind of a comfort level there that shouldn't be there. They have to start playing much better to start to ever comfortably get into a playoff position, or if not, they will be sweating it out till the end of the season.
Yeah,
and we will be with them.
I agree, but it's the NHL point standing system is just so fascinating, and you're able to key on it a little bit more this season because of how strange the Islanders season has gone as far as those columns go. They still haven't lost a game in overtime or a shootout yet. They haven't even gone to a shootout yet.
Amazing.
And the funny thing is, if they could just lose good, right? Like lose better, they would probably still be in that second spot if they could just get through regulation. But for whatever reason, all their games have been, all their losses have been decided in regulation. And most of their wins have been decided in regulation. I think 2 overtime wins, whatever it is, right? And there's actually a couple of teams, at least the last time I looked, where they're 4 points behind in the standings, but they have 2 or 3 more wins. It just doesn't make any sense. It's stupid, but I guess that's this whole, it's part of the parity, and it's part of the league wanting all the teams in it late in the season, right? And, that's kind of what the skepticism is, right? Part of the reason why they went to this point system was so that you didn't have teams out of it by January, right? Teams that still have a prayer, even if they're meandering around what looks like 500 hockey, just because they're grabbing a point every night because they get to the skills competition,
Yeah, and the last thing for me for this show, unless you have anything else, it kind of on that line of, I often bring up the narrative of this long season, is it's going to come down to, whether it's the Islanders or anybody else, is how are you playing in March going into April and then the playoffs? When Tampa won, when Tortorella was coach, early in the season, nobody saw them as a team that was just going to blow everybody away, but they peaked at the right time. They made the right moves. That's what you want from your team. Colorado is not losing any sleep over, having Nathan out for a few weeks and being 3 games over 500. I think they were going maybe 4 after Fichaud's game today that he broadcast. It's getting for the top teams. It's where are you toward the end of the season. Right now, the Islanders still have to play themselves into that conversation, but that is what really matters.
Yeah, for sure. There's still a lot of games to be played. Still a lot of time for the Islanders to play what I would consider more of a complete 60-minute game. The good thing is we've seen what they can do in a 40 to 45-minute game or whatever it is. If they can somehow get more of those 60-minute games than not, then they're probably going to be in a good spot heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, it's there, and I think this coming week it's not going to define anything, but I think it'll be another good sign. It's a great coupling of teams of different qualities with different schedules going into it. I think it'll be a really exciting week.
Absolutely. So I think we can wrap it up there. So thanks, everybody, for getting your questions in for Questions Brewing, brought to you by the great Lost Farmer Brewing Company. Ed, hit that music, please.
Please.
At any time.
It's hitting.
There we go. All right, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in to Hockey Night in New York here at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY and your favorite podcast providers. A huge, huge thanks to Eric Fichaud for joining us on the program tonight. What a great interview that was. And a huge thanks to our great sponsors, Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Flagship location at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington. Check out BlueLineDeli.com to see all their great offerings. Also, a big thanks to Lost Farmer Brewing Company located at 63A 2nd Street in Mineola. Check them out at lostfarmerbrewing.com. And again, viewing party Thursday, December 22nd, Isles vs. Rangers at Lost Farmer. We will have more details to come. We're going to do a pregame show at 6 o'clock. Chris will be with me. We're going to have a great time, so definitely mark your calendars for that. And a big thanks to our brand new sponsor, Main Street Board Game Cafe, located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Again, a huge thanks to you. And hey, if you enjoy what we're doing here, rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, all that good stuff. Chris, where can we find you on the Twitter?
At Chris Botta NHL.
You can find myself on Twitter at Shawnee Hockey. You can follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok at Hockey Night NY. Jay, Ed, you guys good? You have a good night?
The best.
All right?
The best.
That's what I like
Jay
to
doesn't
hear.
want to be in frame tonight.
For Chris Botta, my name is Sean Cuthbert, and for Christian Arnold, of course. Great to finally have him in the studio here. We've been Hockey Night in New York. We'll see you next time. Have a great one.